Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item on this evening's agenda is the minutes of the regular council meeting held on Monday, October 19th. Recommendation to approve.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Hodge. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is minutes of the Universal Accessibility Advisory Committee's meeting of Tuesday, October 6th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Zerillo, seconded by Councillor Towner. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. You'll see us zipping through this because it's bike to work week and council rode their bikes tonight and they want to get home early. Well, one of us did.
Wasn't you.
Mr. Clerk, sorry. Come on, keep it moving.
After that digression, item 3 is the City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4586. These are housekeeping amendments in order to improve clarity and administration. Staff recommendations that council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4586.
Moved by Councillor Zerillo, second by Councillor Asmussen. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 pertains to City of Coquitlam Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4592 and City of Coquitlam Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4593. These are for properties at 1121, 1123, and 1135 Brunette Avenue, 209 and 213 Terrian Street, and 208 Begin Street. Staff recommendations that council give second and third readings to City of Coquitlam Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4592 and second and third readings to City of Coquitlam Heritage Designation Bylaw 4593.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor O'Neill. I'm going to speak. No one. Oh, now they started to push their buttons. But I want to express my disappointment in, and I did at first reading. I voted against first reading. In fact, I expressed my disappointment at the way in which our heritage had been. The way in which the proponent had failed to protect this community's heritage, had essentially let it degrade over the course of a year, despite attempts to have it properly tarped. We showed pictures at the last meeting of a building that wasn't covered at all. It essentially was being rained into, a building that had been partly damaged by fire but was being damaged by neglect. I recognize that the proponent has stepped in and has done some work. I suspect the tarp that's on it now is an acre in size. It's a great big tarp. It covers it completely. I don't know the extent to which it had been damaged by the neglect full period, but this is a heritage revitalization agreement that we would be putting forward to be signed with someone who didn't protect the heritage when we signed the last one, or when we put forward the last one. We heard essentially that he paid so much for the land that he needs high-rise density, or he needs higher density in order to make it work. I paid too much for the land. That's not how it works, I'm afraid. If you had paid more, then I suppose we would have a high-rise application before us and we would be pressured into zoning it high-rise, or maybe we paid a little bit more than that and we could get some a casino or something there. The challenge is that it's got an appropriate density. We try as much as possible to design our communities with appropriate densities. I was willing to go as far as the previous plan, even though it, I think, was a little bit more than what we normally would have granted to that site, which was originally designated townhouses. The proponent's consultant stood and said that townhouses weren't feasible. I asked, feasible economically? In other words, the only reason that it's not feasible for townhouses now is because someone paid too much for the land and needs a higher density in order to get that. That's not our job to try to make the project work. Sometimes it is. Sometimes what we want out of it is of such value that we're willing to go a little bit more. I think this is a bit too much. I respect and value the team of consultants that have been assembled here. I think these are good people that are trying to make the project work, given the fact that the land value in the pro forma is far higher than could possibly be supported with the range of acceptable densities that we ought to be considering. I wanted to find a way to support this project so that we could have the repair and revitalization of this special part of Millardville's heritage done expeditiously. I can't stretch all the way to this project. It's got parking challenges, it's got, I see a number of challenges, but primarily the challenges are in the amount of density we're putting into a place that I don't think can support that. But finally, I also never want to send a signal to the development industry that if you let our buildings, our heritage, rot, if you put garbage on it, as one of the residents said, there's all kinds of garbage there, so please approve this project. I'm not blaming the proponent for the garbage, but I want never to send a message to the development industry that if you let our heritage rot, we will give you better densities. Councillor Zerillo.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I want this property to be upgraded just as much as every other resident of Coquitlam that drives by there almost daily and sees, unfortunately, the condition that it's been left in. But I do believe there's a compromise here. I'm sure there is one, but I'm leaning towards Mayor Stewart's comments about this is probably not the density that any of us anticipated when this first changed hands. So I'd also like to have the city and perhaps the owner to look at the Trev's piece, because I know that was highly of interest when this first came to this council. Thank you.
Yep, Councillor Hodge.
First, I do want to thank the opponent or proponent for this, the owner. Yeah, but I do want to thank the owner of the property who did send a letter apology to council. And I'm going to extend that beyond that too and say an apology to the residents of Coquitlam, because this is really the Coquitlam's asset. And this is something that we're all stewards of. This council, the current owner, previous owners, and it's hard for me because I've been very strong on proposing for heritage and fighting for heritage in this community and the past president of the Heritage Society. So heritage means a lot to me, and we have done some really good heritage revitalization agreements in the past 2 years. And I had great hope for this project, and I supported it when it came through a couple of years ago. It was a lot of density at the time, but it did give us the ability to save a building, a landmark that was right on Barnet. It was interesting that in tonight's comments, somebody speaking on behalf of the developer said they had talked to a couple of people in the community, heritage people, and I think I got the quote right, and she said, this person said, "I will support anything to save heritage." I will support heritage too, but I don't think I will support anything to save heritage. And I'm not sure that this development is coming back to us because of heritage as much as it's come back to us because the economics don't work. Certainly, saving heritage is expensive, but it's also one of those things that I think that we have to do, but not at any cost. And I think the cost of what we're being asked to give up here in terms of density is too great on this property. And like the mayor, I'm also concerned about the condition of the site. Several people wrote letters saying we support this because we want to get the property cleaned up, or it's just become an eyesore. And I don't want properties to get to the point that people start to support them just because they feel that they support projects because they feel it's the only way to get a site cleaned up. So I don't want to send the message that if you let things get bad enough, we'll support things just to clean them up. So I'm torn on this one. I really want to see the building saved. I want to see Millardville cleaned up. but I don't know that I want to support it at any cost. And I think that what we're being asked for in terms of density, the concerns for parking and other things in here, it's just too great. I was supportive at the first request, but it's almost a 50% increase. Going from 66 units in the apartment up to 94 is a big jump, and I'm having trouble supporting that. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Well, I don't like turning down development, especially when it's going to vastly improve Millardville, and because it's a place that's close to my heart, and I really want to see that place develop. I want to see the Heritage House fixed up, which is important to me too. And whether the owner of the property realized that he was supposed to be keeping up or not, I don't know, and I'm not going to judge. But this is too much density on that piece of land. It's just too much. And to bring my point, I went down there last week, and I drove around and looked on Quadling, and just as the people have said, how skinny it is, and there's really no, if we take one part off one of the houses up there, there won't be anything left for them to build on. I mean, they just won't get anything. So we certainly can't do that. The thing that bothers me the most is the aesthetics of it. It will be like, it will stick out like a sore thumb. It will be so tall, taller than anything else we've anticipated going along the road. And it is just going to look so large compared to the corner property that we have. And then we've got Kitty Corner, the park, and then across the street, it's going to be even, I would say, as tall or taller than the buildings that we have across the street. So, and I have no intention of putting more 6-story buildings along Barnet, because we have view corridors to take into consideration. We have lots of people in the Millardville area who have the large lots, and now are beginning to try and develop, and we need to have some view corridors. So for all those reasons, I'm so sorry, but I just can't support this. It's just too much on one site, and having one in and out parking for all these units, that's just not going to work. It just isn't going to work. So that's it.
Thank you. Councillor Asmussen.
Thank you very much. I supported this application the first time through when it came to us at the 64 units. I thought it was a good amount of density for that site for the saving of the heritage building down there. I was disappointed, and I went to our general manager planning. I'd gone by that a few times and asked him to contact the owner because of the lacking condition, and it seemed like it was being left to be neglected, that it could not be saved in the future and that they would just develop. And so I think there was contact early on prior to asking this owner to properly protect that building, which didn't happen up until recently when this application is now before us. And how much extra damage has happened to that building because of that. The other point about this is that a developer is responsible for putting together his package, his pro forma, presenting it to council, what he did the first time. And when that package came to us, he said, this is going to work. This I can do. The building sat for a couple of years, and now we're being told is he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't make the right performance. He made all these mistakes, but now we're coming back and we need this much more. That sets, to me, a bad precedent out there that developers can sort of come in and make a proposal, then come back and say, well, you know what? Later on, we really didn't want, we need more. That's not what we're here for. Do I want the Red House saved? Yes. I supported it before. I mentioned when we sent this to public hearing from first reading, that the increase in density, what I felt was excessive. We heard that there was an extra $250,000 cost for the Trev lot. And so I'm looking at that and I'm saying an extra almost 28 to 30 units because you paid an extra $250,000, and that we found out in the first reading that that was already under discussion and worked on, included into that proposal at that time. So the numbers just don't add up. There's a lot of things that don't work here. I think the team that's come here to present this and try to save this proposal has done a good job, but I can't see us rewarding developers that didn't do their job the first time, didn't properly protect a heritage asset over a period of time, from the time that we first bought the property, got his approval to third reading, until now to asking for a new application and increased density. So I think that just sends a bad message to the community, the development community, about what is accepted and allowed in Coquitlam. And I can't accept this. Thank you.
Councillor Marsden.
Thank you. I appreciate, respect a lot of the comments that have been made with regards to this. I think we heard it very clearly tonight that this site hasn't been overlooked or neglected for 2 years. It's been in excess of 20 years that this particular property has had issues. And I think what we've seen, and what we certainly desire, is a revitalization in Mayardville. And I think we've seen a lot of growth. I think back to the years when I grew up in that area, and we had on the south side of Barnet the houses, I guess if we want to use a very generous term, of multiple colors that the individuals sat on them for years until densification and zoning would allow them to do something of greater value. I see this as quite similar. So we have a situation where we got a piece of property that is in a market that needs to be revitalized. It's a market that I think people find desirable. People like Mayardville. They want to see it revitalized. They want to see it be vibrant again. We heard that again tonight, a gentleman talking about not a lot of children in the area. He'd like to see the housing built where they can come back. I looked at this, and I wasn't on council when it was previously presented. So given that, I look back and say, well, had this been presented to us 2 years ago, how would I have felt about it? And I think 2 years ago I would have felt the same way as I feel today. I think whether or not his pro forma has been done in advance, not my problem. Do I believe that the merits of the application address what we want in the community, which is more affordable housing? We want to see some heritage revitalization. I think it achieves that. The concerns that we've got here, a message to developers that we've allowed it to rot, that they'll get more density. I'm not concerned about sending that message because I think this is something that's happened over 20 years. I think if we're concerned about sending a message that sit on that property for 20 years and you'll get greater density, I don't think developers are going to sit and look that long term. So not on this type of property. Concerns about the one in and out for parking. There's 94 units that would have parking. There's one in and out unit. Well, when we look to Coquitlam and what we have approved up there, we've got 200 unit towers that have one driveway for in and out parking. So I see some similarities to other parts of the cities where we have said yes. From a height perspective, I don't see this as dramatically larger than what's there. There's 4 stories immediately to its west. This has got 5 stories at street level and tapers up to, or steps up to 6. So all in all, I think the merits of this, you've got townhousing, you've got condos of varying degrees, including, I believe I saw 16 3-bedrooms. So we've got affordable housing options that we have said we want to build in our city, we want to have built in our city. This project, I think, ticks off enough boxes in terms of what we do want to do, that I do think we have to get past some of our concerns, perhaps, of what's happened, and say, what do we want for the future? And I think this is the type of thing that we do want for the future, and so I will support it. I do understand very clearly I'm in the minority. I think some have looked at me and said, you don't have to speak. But I think I do. I think we do have to hear that, folks, we need to look for the future. And we do want to recognize our heritage, we do want to retain it, and we do want to provide housing affordability options. This type of development achieves that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marsden said that this project ticks off a lot of boxes, it also ticks off a lot of councillors, I guess. There's 5 have spoken against it, which is, I think, a shame. I think is a shame. And actually, I'll say it right now, I won't hold it against any of the councillors who've spoken against this if they change their mind after listening to my my speech here. And I won't gloat that I've managed to change their mind, because I think this is really important. And I think it's really important that this project goes through. A lot of, I'm in agreement with what Councillor Marsden said on every front, and I want to add some things. It's a very seductive logic when you say that if we do this, then developers are going to come to us down the road and demand this and this and this, and ultimately they're going to be saying, we have to build a high-rise to save this little building, and we'll have no choice but to say, oh yeah, I guess we've set the precedent. Well, it's called reductio ad absurdum, reducing an argument to its absurd limit, and that's an absurd statement to make. And I'll say why that's something. I guess I'm not going to persuade the mayor to change his vote, because I just said his argument was a little absurd.
No, you can say anything absurd you want, Councillor O'Neill. Go ahead.
The proof of the pudding is in the eating. And what we have here right now is a development proposal that generated what sort of public outrage? What sort of gnashing of teeth and wringing of hands? There wasn't that. We actually got a lot. They didn't come here before council today, before the public hearing, but we got several letters that welcomed this development as an important part of revitalizing Millardville, bringing badly needed new money, new families, new growth into the area. These letters didn't say this is ridiculous. This is something that was just intolerable. This is something that we never envisioned. No, they said, hey, this is we're getting 2 good things here. We're going to be able to save an important building, and we're going to get a great new project that's going to add to the vitality of the neighborhood. So they told us that. Do you think they'd come out to say that if we proposed a high-rise tower there? I don't think so. I don't really know, but probably not. And if we heard that, we would take that into account and say, you know what, this is going too far. But are we going too far here? I don't think so. I haven't really seen any evidence that we're going too far. And as I suggested during the public hearing, I've heard no evidence to tell me that what the developer is saying is not correct, that this project just does not make financial sense. So, you know, we could cut off our nose to spite our face if we wanted to, saying, darn it, you know, you're not going to get this, and I guess that building is going to continue to rot. Or we could say, you know what, this is not a bad development. There's a little more density here than we imagined to begin with. The public seems to accept it. It's actually a lovely plan, I think, the way the Red House is situated at the forefront, at the front of this development. It sort of says a little crown jewel there. It's not hidden or buried or anything. It's sort of showcased there. I think it would be quite lovely. I don't think that the development in behind it is going to overpower the area. I think it'll really add to the area. And based on what I heard from the public today, there are some concerns, but I also heard from staff that said parking study has been done, not parking, the traffic study's been done, and the network can handle the increased traffic. And so those are that was sort of the major concern, I think, dealing with traffic, and we heard that the study has been done. Staff has recommended this. They probably wouldn't have if they had all of these red flags come up over the Red House. So I strongly support this, and I really want council to consider the consequences of turning this down for not only neighborhood revitalization, but also for protection of heritage. I don't know where we go. But anyway, we're not dealing with a specific normal rezoning here, where we just consider good land use. This is a heritage revitalization agreement where there's lots of things in play, And I think on balance, this is a good project that I'm very happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Towner.
Thank you. So to begin, I just want to say that I'm very impressed with the extensive, detailed information provided in the reports pertaining to this Heritage Revitalization Agreement. And I want to totally acknowledge all the work that's gone into this. I'm in full support of rehabilitation and preserving our heritage buildings and for having conservation plans in place. I actually find it exciting to be repurposing the old for going into the future. This building has quite the story to tell, being a mushroom farm, and then housing for the mill workers, and now proposed commercial space. I also really like a lot of the elements of this project, the transition, the interpretive park space, the pathways, the design and form keeping with the character, excuse me, the private garden plots, bike parking. There's lots of features I really like about it. And here's where I am going to, how I was going to proceed next was, all this said, I have concerns with the density. But you know what? It wasn't sitting well with me. I also had the impression that, you know, it went to third reading, the developer had the approval to go ahead, and it sat there, and mattresses piled up, and litter, and the tarp was unsightly. And I was going to say, in all good conscience, I can't support this project. However, I'm glad I'm speaking seventh, because I take my role as an elected official seriously in that I need to be consistent. And we need housing, we need affordable housing. I'm not concerned about the traffic, because yes, we've approved a bunch of towers with in and out driveways, and the traffic concerns don't concern me. The number one issue that we heard from the public, letters went out, the signs went up, lots of people were told about this, and the number one issue that we heard back on was they want that eyesore done. Clean it up, revitalize this neighborhood, you know, fix up the red barn, get rid of that tarp, fix it up, don't like looking at it. So you know what? 10 minutes ago, I was gonna say I'm not gonna support it, and actually I've been swayed, and you can gloat all you want, and so can you. But no, I really do think this is an attractive development, and yes, more density than if they went ahead after 2013, but I'm going to vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Okay, no other speakers. Question is second and third reading to the revitalization agreement and the heritage designation bylaw. And two other things. And the previous page of this. I shouldn't have read that out. There you go. All in favor? All opposed? Councillors Asmundson, Hodge, Zarrillo, Reed, and myself are opposed. The motion fails 5-4.
Next item, item 5, is City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4597. This pertains to 920 Rochester Avenue. Staff recommendations that council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4597.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
Item 6 is City of Coquitlam official community plan amendment bylaw number 4602 and City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4603. These are for properties at 3438, 3441, 3450, 3451, 3460, and 3461 Queenston Avenue. Staff recommendations that council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to City of Coquitlam official community plan amendment bylaw number 4602, and second, third, and fourth and final readings to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4603.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson. I'll give it to second to Councillor Hodge, the two residents of Burke Mountain, who gets the most flack from residents and their neighbors because we're finally going ahead with a school rezoning. Councillor Zerillo.
Yeah, perhaps, Mayor Stewart, you were going to speak on this, and maybe
I was.
if you are, then I won't. But I think it'll be important for media that may cover this that if this does go forward, that community still understands that the provincial funding is not yet secured, and it doesn't mean that the school site will go immediately to build. So I don't know if you were going to talk to that, but I just want to make sure that if media is covering, that they let the residents know. This doesn't mean that it's going to start building right away.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Marsden.
Thank you very much. I think, first off, we can't get this and other schools built quick enough in our Northeast, so I think this is great. The one piece I would ask on this is staff, in noting the couple of the emails or letters we got with regards to this, they weren't specific to the land use, but the neighboring properties were concerned about turnarounds and that. So I would just ask, as this does move forward, that we communicate with those neighbors and address their specific concerns with regards to turnaround, with regards to the question we had tonight about the proposed Dayton extension. So I want to make sure that we have that dialogue and reach out. But fully supportive of this, and would again encourage that we work with our senior officials to ensure the funding gets announced ASAP and we get shovels in the dirt, get this done. Thanks.
Absolutely, and what I was going to say, a few things related to this is the first of these schools to go forward. It hasn't received any indication, or rather, hasn't received the final funding approvals from Treasury Board, although we understand repeatedly that that's imminent. That's not what we're here tonight to talk about. We're here tonight to determine whether that's the appropriate use for this parcel of land, and I suspect that Council will give it its nod that this is, in fact, the right place for school number 1, Smiling Creek Elementary, or as whatever it comes to be known when it gets finished. I want to acknowledge the work that's gone into this, though. There's a whole bunch of effort put in by one person, the city manager, who actually, I think, really tried to bring the disparate parties together and tried to make sure we could find an arrangement that put a rezoning before us tonight. And I'm glad to see it here tonight. And I know that for the residents of Burke Mountain, as Councillor Marsden just said, this can't happen fast enough. We have been pressing and pushing and pleading for schools to be advanced on Burke Mountain to the school district and to the province. We've met repeatedly with provincial officials and with school district officials. We're finally getting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to, I hope, get word very quickly about funding on this, and then we'll see a development permit. And when that happens, I echo the comments about turnarounds and drop-off locations. We see too many lessons learned from our existing school properties, some of which were built in a different era when cars were less prevalent, but some of them were built in the last decade or two, and we still have horrendous situations with the drop-off of children and the way in which cars are managed and students are managed in a pedestrian realm. And I want to see a development permit that takes that into account a whole lot more than has happened in the past. And I also want to make certain that if these schools are intended to be expandable by virtue of the placement of portables at some point, temporarily or otherwise, that never takes place on a parking lot again. Our parking is meant to, it's intended to meet the requirements of our bylaw for lots of good reasons, and we can't be using it for buildings, for portable buildings or otherwise. And we see that on too many of our school sites. We can't let that happen again. Other speakers? The motion is second, third, and fourth. All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
Next item, item 7, is a development permit authorization for a drive-through restaurant at 2881 Barnet Highway. Staff recommendations that council approve the signing and sealing of this DP and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute it.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, seconded by Councillor Zerillo. Councillor Reid.
All the access in and out of this place is going to be off the little funny road behind Conley, right?
A nod from Mr. McIntyre.
So if someone, did you know there's parking on both sides of Conley? I don't know if there's supposed to be, but there is. And sometimes you have to, just one car can barely pass there. So I don't know what we're going to do about the access and egress, and that's sort of a concern for me.
Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Certainly Connolly is a little less than a standard commercial roadway. I believe it's a right-of-way that goes through there. And I recall there's sections where it's signed for no parking on either side. It's just the carriageway width. And maybe in front of this property there is some parking. It's an existing condition there, and that was assessed as part of the development permit application. They tried to look at where access could be gained to the site, what the stacking distance would be for the drive-through function, and it's in the end it was determined it would be a workable solution there.
Okay, so if I can just refer to attachment 3, I guess is the only thing that can help. So they're going to come in off Conley where the driveway is now. My bank's there, so I go in there all the time, and it's very dangerous. Okay. So you're coming in, and then would you make an immediate right where it says drive-through?
That's correct.
And then you'd go around the outside of the building. And where would you go out? Back down where you came in, the same access and egress. There's going to be, I can't tell from this drawing, you wouldn't go right around and try and come out on Johnson, would you?
Your Worship, and through the chair, yeah, I'm sorry, the quality of this drawing is not great,
No,
but what's been described by Councillor Reid is correct. You come in off of Connolly, and at that point you have a choice. You can proceed into the parking lot, sort of the center of the site,
Okay.
or you can swing out to the right, and there's the a one-way lane system sort of wraps around the perimeter of the site to give that stacking distance for the vehicles, and you come around on the east side of the building. So it stays within the property, it doesn't go as far east as Johnson, and that takes you through the drive-through area, and then it brings you back out to the central driveway on the north side on Connolly.
So there's still only going to be the one access and egress area off Conley for the whole site. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that is correct. So as Mr. McIntyre was describing, the queuing for the drive-through
is
around the entire perimeter of the site.
Okay, and are they taking the building down? I think I read that, yeah, okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Okay. No other speakers? I mean, I've got similar concerns about the unusual condition of the right-of-way that is being used as a roadway in the back. I don't know whether we have more control, or we can negotiate at this point more control over the ability to park, or the restrictions on parking in that right-of-way. It's meant to be a roadway. It's not meant to be a linear parking lot, and yet it's used as a linear parking lot. I use a bank near there, in that access is off there, and there are some times when you simply can't leave. You can't leave the bank, which is I don't do much in-person banking, but I'm sure the bank staff appreciate having me as a captive audience when I'm stuck. So I really have hesitation about this. I think that it's an attractive proposal. It's an attractive location for lots of things, but I really want to see us find a solution there. Ms. Tiffany.
Your worship, thank you. This was a concern too that was also expressed by staff in reviewing this application, but because it is a development permit only for form and character, we were a bit limited in terms of the how specifically to address the situation with regard to Conley Crescent. Moving forward, I think we see potentially that this area could redevelopment, and should any rezoning applications come forward in the future, that would be the tool by which staff could revisit the status of Conley Crescent, moving from a right-of-way to a publicly dedicated street.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, the question is a development permit. No. Question is a development permit. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries without opposition. That's why I didn't say it was unanimous. I said it wasn't opposed.
Next item, item 8, pertains to the Evergreen Line Corridor North Road Enhancement Plan. This is from Foster to Cottonwood. Staff recommendations that Council endorse the proposed boulevard improvement plan for North Road between Foster and north of Cottonwood for implementation as outlined in the report before you.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Zerillo. Councillor, no. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 9 pertains to a leadership development program for 2016-2017. Staff recommendations that Council direct staff to bring forward the following new requests to the 2016 budget process. Annual funding of $42,500 in order to support a leadership development program in Coquitlam to actively address the strategic management of Coquitlam's workforce and proactive succession planning.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Towner. Councillor Reid.
We'll move this forward to budget, but I don't know that I'm going to be supporting it there. This is a lot of money. We have a leadership development program in. I'd like to take a look and see how many folks that we put through a program actually stay with us. That's important to me. And it's great. I love to promote from within, and I love to help people, improve their lives and improve their education. I think it's good. But these are taxpayer dollars, and I think we have to have a really good look at this. Over the weekend, I just found out that there's a lot of people out there, like single moms, who want to go back to school and take a program like LPN or, something like that. One I talked to, it cost her $14,000. She's trying to raise 2 kids on her own, and yet the government offers nothing for these people to go back to school and try and improve their lot in life and perhaps get off government assistance and that. And, you have to weigh those things with what we're trying to do here. So I will move it on to budget, but without further discussion with all my colleagues, I don't know if I'd be willing to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously.
Your Worship, that's the last formal item on this agenda.
I just want to acknowledge in all seriousness, this is Bike to Work Week, so that I want to acknowledge those of our residents who are going to take to the streets. Tomorrow is supposed to be sunny, sunnier than this morning was. This morning was a little wet, but those of you who can, we'd love to see as much as possible people try different modes of transportation than the private automobile, and Bike to Work Week is one option to get them all to do that. I know all of council members are anxious to try it as well at some point this week, and I look forward to that. One last comment. Tomorrow is World Day for Audiovisual Heritage, and it reminds us about the need to make sure we do preserve our heritage, in this case audiovisual heritage, trying to transfer analog tapes and things into more permanent formats, but also the archives that our city has established, the kinds of work that many heritage groups, including a group that Councillor Hodge chaired for many years, trying to make sure we capture the heritage, written, audiovisual, photographic, and otherwise of our history, not just the buildings, and we had discussion about a building tonight, but all kinds of heritage that we would hate to lose for future generations, and that's tomorrow. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor O'Neill. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Marsden is opposed, but it carries anyway. You're either opposed or late. Question period. We'll have up to 15 minutes of questions from any of the members of the audience on tonight's agenda. Questions on the items of tonight's agenda. Questions on tonight's agenda. Questions on tonight's agenda. Seeing none, thank you all for coming.